So you're scrolling on Instagram, and one by one you're bombarded with ads for re-mineralizing gum. Yes, that's right. Re-mineralizing gum. Gum that allegedly, just from chewing it, rebuilds the enamel in your teeth. And you think to yourself, well, I know how re-mineralizing enamel works with fluoride and fluoridated toothpaste, but can gum actually do that? Well, let's talk about the science behind that.
Welcome to The Science Behind That with Atticus Hamilton.
Hello, all you scientists, and welcome back to The Science Behind That podcast. I'm your host, Atticus Hamilton, and as you heard from the intro, we're going to be talking about re-mineralizing gum. That's right, gum that allegedly is able to magically put the enamel back on your teeth. So we're going to be talking about that today. But before we jump into today's episode, I'd like to invite all of you to grab yourselves a nice hot cup of coffee, add a little bit of maple syrup to it, and we will jump right into today's episode. So, re-mineralizing gum. This was something that came to me as a topic because I myself was looking at Instagram, and Instagram does this thing now where, like YouTube, one ad is no longer enough. They show you 10 million ads in between each reel post, and they always make the ads, they design them to look like real posts, and then you realize that it's an ad and it's a company trying to take money out of your wallet. But I saw a lot of ads for these different companies that were selling re-mineralizing gum. And it got me thinking about tooth enamel and the process by which that works, and if re-mineralizing gum actually works. So we're going to talk about that today. First off, we're going to talk about what enamel is, how it's made, how your teeth naturally remineralize themselves, and of course, we're going to talk at the end about about remineralizing gum, if it's a legitimate thing, and some studies that talk about them as well, or about it as well. So, tooth enamel. Enamel is the shiny white part of your teeth. It's the outer layer, and the purpose of enamel is to protect the soft part of the tooth on the inside called dentin. It's to protect that dentin from the external environment, protect it from bacteria, harsh chemicals, etc. And enamel, much like bone, if you listen to the episode that I just did on osteoporosis, is made up of a mineral called hydroxyapatite. And in that episode I did on osteoporosis, I talk about hydroxyapatite extensively, so I recommend you give that a listen. Hydroxyapatite is a phosphate crystallized mineral that is secreted by osteoblasts in the bones and amealioblasts in the teeth. And in the teeth, unlike in the bones, where in the bones the bony matrix is about 60 to 70% hydroxyapatite, 60 to 70, 60 to 80% depending on person. Hydroxyapatite to collagen, so it's called the HAC matrix. In the mouth and the teeth, it's pretty much your enamel is pretty much 100% hydroxyapatite. It's about 96%. It's as close to that 100% as you can get, right? And hydroxyapatite, we talked about this before as well, is very strong, but it's brittle. It's very scratch resistant, but it's brittle. I like to think of hydroxyapatite as a diamond, or as a blade made out of 440C steel. Now, for those of you who aren't into bladesmithing, that's just words to you. That's just gibberish. But for those of you who are into bladesmithing, you know that 440C steel is a great steel to make small knives or kitchen knives, but it would be a very bad steel to make a sword out of because it is extremely hard. It's extremely hard, very, very, very durable, but in being very hard and durable, it's brittle. So in a camp knife, it's not really an issue, but in a sword, it becomes a big issue because the more brittle a blade is, the more risk there is that it'll break on impact. So it may hold an edge very well, but it has a high likelihood of breaking. That being said, enamel and tooth enamel, hydroxyapatite, is very much like that. It is very scratch resistant, it's very durable, but it's brittle. So just over the course of your life, you're going to lose enamel. You're going to lose enamel through drinking juices, and you're going to lose enamel through age, you're going to lose enamel through chipping your teeth, etc. Enamel will be lost. So the body has a way of remineralizing enamel, but it does not do it via production of more hydroxyapatite. Why? Well, it's because of how hydroxyapatite, or enamel in this case, is produced. How is it produced? It's produced by cells called amelioblasts. And they produce the enamel when the tooth is inside the jaw. That's right. So in a developing child, let's talk about a child who's lost his or her baby teeth and the adult teeth are on the way. Or they're about to lose their baby teeth and the adult teeth are on the way. Within the jaw, the fully formed tooth exists. And it's surrounded by a thin membrane of cells called amelioblasts. And these amelioblasts produce the 96% hydroxyapatite matrix. They produce the enamel. They encase the dentin in layer upon layer upon layer of hydroxyapatite when it's still within the jaw. The problem is, second the tooth erupts from the jaw, the amelioblasts that encircle it die. That film dies, they go away, and so you're not able to produce true enamel ever again, unfortunately. Because the enamel's produced by the amelioblasts, and once they die, i.e. the tooth erupts out of the jaw, that's it, you can't produce any more. And unfortunately, our mouths are not like sharks, where we're constantly producing teeth. So you're kind of stuck with the teeth you've got right now, and therefore you're stuck with the enamel you've got right now. But your body does have a way of strengthening the enamel that's there. Now, how does that work? Well, in the body, when you're eating or chewing on foods, the first outermost layer of enamel is constantly being worn off. So what does your body do? It deposits calcium and phosphate ions into a crystalline matrix over the enamel there to fill in the gaps of missing hydroxyapatite. So how does that work then? All that does basically is your saliva lays down layers of calcium and phosphate ions in the areas of thinner enamel on your teeth, and those bond to each other via covalent bonds, and that forms a similar enamel-like structure and strengthens the enamel, right? So that's how your body does it normally. And that's how your body does it without amelioblasts. Now, what are some other reasons why enamel goes away? Well, a big reason are the bacteria that are in your mouth. So there are a lot of bacteria in the mouth, and some species, most species in the mouth, produce acids. And people who have a high sugar diet have worse oral hygiene on average because these bacteria are eating the monosaccharides that are in the sugars, the monosaccharides and the disaccharides that are in the sugary beverages or sweets that the person is eating. And when the bacteria are metabolizing that, they are producing acids, generally carbonic acid, but they're producing acids, carbonic acid, citric acid, and this is going to eat away at that hydroxyapatite layer. And another thing as well is these bacteria use an enzyme called enolase to produce these different acids. And we'll touch back on that enolase in a little bit. But ultimately, they're producing acids, which is breaking down the enamel, which is one of the reasons why you get cavities. So, your parent, I don't know if y'all's parents told you, but when I was a kid, my parents always told me, Atticus, brush your teeth before you go to bed, because you don't want sugar sitting on it, sugary beverages. And why is that? The reason that is because it provides an environment for these bacteria and a food source where they can eat the sugar and produce these acidic byproducts that break down the enamel. And then your body can't deposit calcium and phosphate ions fast enough to repair the holes in the enamel. So, that being said, toothpaste, right? Toothpaste with fluoride in it and fluoride in the drinking water has been shown over numerous studies to help with deteriorating enamel. Why is that? Because what happens is the fluoride ions, they basically kick a hydroxy group out, or the hydroxy group out of hydroxyapatite, and form a compound called fluoroapatite. Now, fluoroapatite is much smaller in terms of volume, but denser than hydroxyapatite is. And so what that means is that it increases the hardness of the enamel and it increases the resistance to acid of the enamel. And so that's how the fluoridated toothbrushes and fluoridated water are working, is they're replacing the hydroxy group with a fluoride, which is strengthening the enamel that way by creating fluoroapatite, right? So, what are some other ways that you can strengthen your enamel? Well, ultimately, other ways that people do is by ensuring that they have good oral hygiene and they're getting enough calcium and phosphorus. Because as I mentioned previously, that calcium and phosphorus goes to be laid down by the saliva over areas of weaker enamel to strengthen that damaged hydroxyapatite layer. So finally then, the question that we all have tuned in for, which is re-mineralizing gum. So re-mineralizing gum comes in a bunch of varieties. There's varieties that contain calcium and phosphorus, or phosphate. There's varieties that contain fluoride, which some you need a prescription for in America. And then there's some that contain a compound called nanohydroxyapatite. Now, nanohydroxyapatite is essentially hydroxyapatite, but the delivery mechanism is different. It's delivered in the form of these really, really tiny particles that are easy to absorb. And what these companies claim is that nanohydroxyapatite in gum is able to more rapidly deposit on the tooth and fill in the tooth with regular hydroxyapatite when compared to fluoroapatite that's created by fluoridated products. And their argument is that it's better for you and blah, blah, blah. Now, what does the data actually say? Well, what the data actually says is nanohydroxyapatite better for your teeth or stronger than fluoroapatite is? No, it's not. Because the reality is nanohydroxyapatite is still hydroxyapatite, and the reason why fluoroapatite is stronger and more acid resistant is because of what I mentioned previously. The fluoride ion is denser or is smaller than a hydroxide or a hydroxy ion, a hydroxy group, and so it creates a smaller, denser compound, which therefore allows it to pack in more into a smaller volume, and it increases the hardness and increases the acid resistance through that mechanism. So nanohydroxyapatite, however, has been shown in studies to actually deposit on the teeth more rapidly than fluoride does in terms of the chewing gum. So the answer to the question what is remineralizing chewing gum? It's chewing gum that is able to strengthen the enamel in your teeth through either nanohydroxyapatite, calcium and phosphate ions, or fluoride. And does it work? Well, some of them do, yes. Then the ones that contain nanohydroxyapatite, I was able to find numerous studies that showed a moderate increase in enamel, particularly in enamel-less regions or of lower enamel density. And it was able to successfully, at least to some degree, re-enamel that area. Now, what are we talking about? We're talking about 9%, okay? Or that around there. Was able to increase the enamel density by about 9%. And fluoroapatite, same thing. So there are some chewing gums out there that contain fluoride ions, and those work through the exact same mechanism. So I would say that if you are looking at the remineralizing chewing gum, I would stick to the ones that contain either nanohydroxyapatite or fluoride ions, because those actually work in a similar mechanism that fluoridated toothbrushes work or toothpaste work, etc. The ones that just contain calcium or phosphate or phosphorus, those are a bit of a scam because the data seemed to be a little mixed on those, and you can get calcium and phosphate through a healthy diet. Milk, fish, animal proteins, leafy greens, that sort of thing will give you the trace minerals you need to ensure that your saliva is naturally able to remineralize your teeth. So overall, ladies and gentlemen, to summarize, we discussed what enamel is. We discussed what it's made of, how it's produced. We discussed how your body naturally remineralizes your teeth. And we talked about the answer to the question, what is remineralizing chewing gum and does it work? I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode of the Science Behind That podcast. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I enjoyed doing this episode. I will see you all on Monday. And remember, as always, ladies and gentlemen, stand up and question everything.